Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Quran for Ramadan. Today we'll also discuss another passage, and this passage is taken from Surah Ash-Shura. The passage that is under discussion is actually something that outlines something very important for our collective affairs of life, and at the same time, it gives us direction vis-a-vis the life that we are going to spend in this world. And the most important aspect of that life, as we have often discussed, is that our own attention towards God, our own focus towards God has to be established, and that is best established through the prayer. So, to be an individual whose prayers are always directing ourselves and making ourselves realize that we are standing before the Almighty, in an accountable way, is something that has to be always understood. And one of the greatest manifestations of this accountability is the fact that we stand before the Almighty and we bow our heads before Him, we kneel before Him, and at the same time, we acknowledge Him as our Creator. So the verses of discussion today are 37 and 38 from Surah Ash-Shura, which is the 41st Surah of the Quran, 42nd Surah of the Quran. It says, وَالَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشَ وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ والذين استجابوا لربهم وأقاموا الصلاة وأمرهم شورى بينهم ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. And those who abstain from major sins and open vulgarities, and when they are overcome by anger, such are these people that they forgive. And those who have responded to the invitation of their Lord and are diligent in the prayer, and their system is based on their mutual consultation, and spend for our cause from the sustenance we have blessed them with. So, starting off from the first verse, you can see how importantly it says that the believers or people who have been created by the Almighty with an awareness that they will be held accountable for Him, they are ones who abstain from major sins and open vulgarities. The Quran has discussed these open sins elsewhere, and vulgarities also. We know that the greatest sin is that of polytheism, called shirk by the Quran. It is something that the Almighty says that if it is done deliberately, everything He can forgive, but polytheism is something that He cannot forgive, because this is something in which we impute falsehood to God. We impute something to God that we have no knowledge of. In the text, in the language of the Quran, it is called iftara Allah al-kazib, which means that you are imputing falsehood to God. The second major sin, of course, is to murder someone, to kill someone. That also has been discussed earlier on in various contexts, but killing someone is a major sin, and the Quran says that if he is not forgiven for that, then the eternal hell will wait for such a person. And the third major sin is adultery. That again has been discussed in the Quran in several instances, and the reason being that it is something that totally strikes at the base of the family system, which is the basic building block. It is the basic building block of religion, of our family. And this is something, if it is allowed in any way, then out of wedlock or extramarital relations or having paramours, all these things, they strike at the very base of the family system. So the Quran says that as long as these people, they abstain from these major sins and open vulgarities. I mean, open vulgarities, of course, refer to similar deviances in which you don't realize that at times you're doing small things which are totally unbecoming of you, and these, of course, they include pornography, viewing of pornography. They include the display of one's private parts. So all these things they relate to fawahish. So fawahish basically actually refer to open vulgarities in which you make a display of your own sexual organs, or you invite other people to do so, or in any way indulge in things that relate to it. So again, that is something which is it plays havoc with our inner purity, and it makes us an addict. It does not make us a pure individual. So these two have to be abstained from. And then the next thing which is mentioned is وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ, that these are people who, when they get angry, they actually forgive people. Anger is a emotion that can wreak havoc, we all know, but at the same time, we have to understand that in its origin, in its essence, anger is a positive emotion in the sense that when we get angry for injustice, when we get angry for someone or some people who are suffering from oppression, then this is a very positive way. The only thing is that emotion has to be channeled in a way that nothing destructive takes place from it. So anger management in itself is a science. It's an art. It's a skill that has to be learned. And as the Quran says, that the people who are the servants of God, people who are Muslims, people who are going to be forgiven by God if they display a certain behavior. One of their traits and one of their characteristics is that they manage their anger. They don't get angry easily. It is here that I'd like to suggest a very short sort of a program how you can control or we can control our anger, because anger is something that gets the better of us, especially in the month of Ramadan when we are empty stomach. It does come, and at times we don't even realize, and we have become its target. So, to be a person who can manage his anger, her anger, two strategies can be adopted, and both these strategies can be very helpful. So first is a short-term strategy or a short-term measure, and then we have a long-term measure. So as far as the short-term measure is concerned, it's just a question of delaying your reaction as much as you can, because you see, your blood is going to pump, your adrenaline is going to pump, and you're going to turn red in the face, and that anger spike is going to go up. That's a biological, I mean, it's like a biological happening, and that spike is bound to come down. You only need to give it a little time, like for example, even a minute would suffice. And if you are able to delay your reaction so that in that 1 minute nothing comes out of your mouth, nothing, you say nothing, you do nothing, then in all probability, once that spike dies down, your reaction will be much more calculated. So the first step is to delay that reaction, and that can be delayed by, for example, drawing breaths, changing your posture, changing your position, talking to yourself, and saying these sentences like, I'm not going to get angry. So it's just going to give you more time to react. The long term measures include, for example, that we have to understand that as far as the scheme of God is concerned, at times things happen unexpectedly, and one of the greatest causes, or the most I would say rampant cause of anger, is that we come across unexpected happenings or people making mistakes. So for this we have to realize that when things happen unexpectedly, it might be unexpected for us, but God has programmed them in a particular way, and the scheme of God, of course, is going to prevail. So we have to surrender to the scheme of God. And at the same time, if we think that people are making mistakes and they are making us angry, then we need to review our own selves as well, because we also make mistakes, and human beings are individuals who are bound to make mistakes. So it's but human to err. So if we are in a position to forgive people, that will also appease your anger. And particularly when you get angry at someone, always imagine his or her good traits. If you imagine the person's good traits with you, with whom you get angry with, your focus will suddenly shift. And finally, and last but not the least, if ever something does happen in anger, then immediately we must apologize to the person, and of course make amends as well. But all in all, anger is like I mean, it's like a real challenge to all of us. We have to make a concerted effort to control it, and at the same time become calm and calculated individuals. We have to work on ourselves. No one is going to make that anger go away from us. We have to control our anger ourselves, and the sooner we do it, the better. So, فَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُهُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. And then the next thing which is mentioned here is وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ. Again, they are the people who have responded to the invitation of their Lord, which means that these are individuals who are always thinking that the Almighty is someone who has called them to the righteous path. His prophets have called him to the righteous path, and they immediately respond to this by saying that yes, we are going to tread this righteous path. And again, something that you commonly encounter in the Quran, which is the salat, which is the prayer, that is mentioned right after, and it said aqamu salat, which means that these are the people who adhere to their prayer, who are diligent in their prayer. And in the recent sessions, we see that the way the prayer has been discussed, it's reason enough for us to conclude that this is one of the most important, or perhaps the foremost manifestations of our submission to the Almighty. It is like a practical manifestation of the fact that we have accepted God as our Creator, and we are thanking Him by placing our forehead in the prayer on the ground, by kneeling before Him, by letting Him know that we are standing in awe and accountability before Him. So this Aqamu Salata is, of course, something. It's just not. It does not simply mean that you have to offer the prayer. So the word aqama, if it is accurately translated, for lack of a better word, the best word that I can imagine is that they are diligent and vigilant in their prayers, which means that their focus is in the prayer. They seldom lose focus in the prayer. They are punctual in their prayer. They pray in a cool and calm way. Their own personalities, not just their outer self that bends before God, their inner personality also bends before God, bows before God, and accepts God as their creator. Now, the final thing which is mentioned here is also something that relates to our practical life, and that is وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ, which means that they are ones whose collective system is always based on mutual consultation. So وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, and then it says وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. I think I'm just sharing the wrong slide. So وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ, which means that their system is based on consultation, which in other words means that the system of collectivity, or in short, our collective system, which can also be termed as our political system, is based on consultation. It is based on asking for the opinion of people, which means that, in other words, the term that the Quran adopts is shura, but it is precisely the same element that is found in it as is found in democracy. So, in other words, this sentence has given us a whole new idea, and it tells us that as far as the political system is concerned, then that is based on the consultation of people. It is not based on dictatorship. It is not based on theocracy. It is not a state in which there is no religion. The fact is that their religion is based on the consultation, or the system is based on consultation, which in other words means that the opinion of the people will be taken, they shall be consulted, and then, of course, in the case of lack of consensus, the majority opinion would be accepted. And this is precisely what democracy is. And this is one of the most forgotten verses also of the Quran. And because of lack of attention on this verse, we have not been able to come to a definite conclusion regarding what exactly is the political system which is envisaged by Islam. However, if we pay attention and direct our focus to this verse, we can clearly see that the Quran says that amruhum shura bainahum, that their system is based on their consultation, which means that everyone who is part of that system shall be consulted, and in case of a difference of opinion, then the matter will be settled by a majority vote. And of course, as a result of that, people who are elected to the to the office, they shall be elected by the majority vote, and as long as they enjoy the confidence of the majority, they'll stay in that position. If they lose that confidence, of course, they'll no longer be eligible to hold that position. So all in all, it's basically something which is dependent on the will of people. And this actually tells us that, as many of our scholars think, contrary to that, this is not a monarchy, it's not a dictatorship which Islam at all envisages. It is something that has been found in our history. We find dynasties ruling, we find monarchies in our own history. But if you look at the succession of the Prophet, the first four caliphs were elected in a very democratic way. It was only after the fourth caliph, Ali Ta'ala Anhu, when this democracy changed into a monarchy. And ever since that time, until 1924, till the arrival of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, when he abolished the caliphate, we had this dynastic rule. And this gave Muslim scientists, political scientists, this notion that perhaps it is monarchy which our religion tells us to establish. And as I said, this is a very grave misconception, and the sooner we do away with it, the better. The final thing which is mentioned in this verse is وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, which means that they are individuals who spend from the cause, or who spend from the money that God has said, I have given them. So it's not that something that they have from their own self. It is something actually that they has been given to them by the Almighty. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ actually means that they are gracious in their spending. They are always on the lookout to spend for people who are in need. They are not selfish people. They are not someone who always think about themselves. They also think about the people around them. So with this, we come to an end to today's session, and we can now have our Q&A.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm still waiting for hands to be raised. Okay, Ammar Rasool, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Thank you.
Dr. Saab, my question is this particular portion of the verses that we have studied today, Amruhu Shura bainahum, specifically on that. Do you not think that this is slightly contradictory or maybe completely contradictory to another verse of the Quran where it says that it's in Surah An'am 6:116, where it says that if you obey most of those upon earth, they will mislead you from the way of Allah and follow nothing but assumption. And so in that sense, I felt that in one context, Quran is saying that the majority does not necessarily have to be on the right.
I get your question. You see, if you look at the context of Surah An'am verse, it's not talking about any political system. It's the idolaters who were in majority at that time. They are in the background, and the believers are being told that if you follow the majority religion, then they are going to lead you astray. So the question is not about any political system at that instance. It's about religion that the people are going to follow. So primarily monotheist people who were accepting Islam, and they were in the process of accepting Islam, the Bani Ismail, they are being told that if you follow the majority of these mushrikun, then they are going to just lead you astray, and instead of adopting monotheism, you'll end up with the same religion which your ancestors had. So that has an entirely different context.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Samina Naeem, please ask your question. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Regarding this verse that one should seek the opinion of others, you've described it very nicely in the context of democracy. But can we also relate it to taking opinion from others in daily matters of our lives when we are in doubt? It can be something related to professional opinion or even a small thing.
So you see, what happens is that this particular verse is specifically relating to the collective system. So as far as in other affairs of our personal or daily lives is concerned, I mean, it's always something good to have some collective wisdom, some wisdom sharing. Always, it's good to have someone else's opinion, because you see, if a single person can make an error, and if you consult widely, the chances of error reduce. So that is more of a common sense thing. And yes, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Imran Khan, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. So my question pertains to this Shura bainahum, the democracy point which you've highlighted, sir. You gave the example of 4 caliphs. They were rightly guided and they were the most pious. But in today's world, you see the people who are contesting the election and those who get elected they're not the ones. So is there any criteria that we should vote for or elect in Shura bainahum, or any, you can say, a drug addict or a smuggler or a peddler or can become a MNA and we should vote?
So you see, the Quran has not imposed any criteria. It says that you have to improve your own lot. If people are corrupt in your society, if people are, let's say, they are not up to the mark, then you have to actually create a system in which you make people aware of their rights, you make them better people. But until that time happens, your society or people who are going to rule you are a reflection of your own self. So they have to come from you. If you would like better people to come from you, then you have to actually make your own selves better. So otherwise, the Quran would have said that only scholars should have ruled, or maybe only people who have certain qualities should rule. We don't find any such restriction imposed by the Almighty. It says Amruhum Shura bainahum. It's a consultation between them, whoever they are. So the better they are, the better will be the person who gets elected or the party that gets elected. And if they are no good, then I mean we have little to complain, because this is how we are. So people who are going to get elected are just going to be a reflection of who we are.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I have a chat question. What is the difference between polytheism and idol worshipping practices in Hinduism? Hindus also believe in God.
Yes, that is an interesting question. So, polytheism or polytheistic practices are ones in which you willfully and intentionally and deliberately and knowingly ascribe deities to God. You say that, well, there is one supreme God and he has partners as well. And this is what the idolaters of Mecca used to say. The Bani Ismail also used to say the same, that God is the real creator, but to help him out and to make matters easy for him, he has deputed the tasks of governing this universe to his various partners, and they would regard the daughters, the angels, to be the daughters of God, and they would worship them as such. So this is what polytheism is, in which you willfully ascribe more than one deity as your savior. Uh, Hinduism actually is also, it started off with pure monotheism. So if you look at the Veds, which is their earliest scripture, you'll find that it started off with perfect monotheism. It doesn't have any ring of any polytheistic practice, but slowly and surely it gave way to polytheistic practices, and now they practice the Trimurti, which means that Brahma, Vishnu, and Krishna, they are the three main gods, besides many others who impose themselves or who ascribe themselves in such situations. But having said that, they also believe in one supreme God. They call him as Ishwar or Bhagwan or Brahma. But the fact is that in spite of saying this, the current form of Hinduism is highly incriminated with polytheism. But if you start off Hinduism from its very earliest roots, you'll find that it never was a polytheistic religion. It started off with monotheism. In fact, there are scholars who believe that when Hinduism started off, it had a very deep, impact from the teachings of Prophet Noah, and it seems to be the same time. And Prophet Noah's teachings deeply impacted them, and they started off with this system of monotheism.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Ammar Rasool, you can ask your question, and everyone else, if you want to ask questions, please raise your hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I have two questions relating to the same portion of the verse. My first question is, Dr. Saab, why is this particular thing, the political system, given so much importance in this part of the Quran? Like all the other aspects that are being talked about are so essential and important, like staying away from major sins and aapki ibadat and giving alms and charity, and then this particular thing is talked about in the middle of that as if it was equally important, but then the Quran does not mention this anywhere else. So why is it important to Islam in such a big way? That's my first question. And my second question, which was related to this, was, do other scholars interpret this verse differently? Like, for example, I'm very clear that your school of thought talks about it in terms of this meaning only and only democracy. But are there any possible interpretations of this verse out there which other scholars believe in? Thank you.
I'll answer your second question first. You see, the thing is that for them, this verse has got overshadowed by two things. One, when they saw that right after the Prophet, ever since today, right up to the 20th century when the caliphate was abolished, we saw a monarchy all the time. So a very large part of our scholarly tradition thinks that it is monarchy, which means that a single person who has the right to overrule any majority decision, he is the Khalifa, he is the head. And because they have seen this happen ever since the times of the Prophet, and even to them, the first four rightly guided caliphs, they were also nominated. So you see, they don't accord any democratic election even to the first four caliphs. So for them, right from Caliph Abu Bakr up to the last Sultan Abdul Hamid, the last caliph, it was like a monarchy that went all through. And this actually, you see, when you see a practical example, at times you get so involved in that you, at times sidetrack some of the Quranic references in this regard. Secondly, the thing that actually also played its role was another verse in the Quran, which is mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, which actually tells us, "Shawirhum fil amr fa iza azamta fatawakkal ala Allah." So, which means that the Prophet is actually addressed in this verse, and it tells him that you can consult people, but once you reach a decision, it's your decision. You can overrule the decision of or the advice of the majority. Disregarding the fact that this verse is not talking about any general system, it is talking about the Prophet himself, who was guided by God. So he did not need to have any democratic setup in his own times, because he was divinely guided. So this verse, which is actually specifically related to the Prophet of God, became another reinforcement for them, that if there was monarchy and dictatorship outside in those 1400 years, they could see this verse of the Quran as well, somehow reinforcing that it is basically a dictatorship or a monarchy that Islam envisages. Your first question is that how come that in this sequence we find such an important mention, and mostly we find individual directives earlier on. So you see, this is something which the Quran always does. And remember, it's not just the individual part of the directive that is being discussed. So you see, it's basically an amalgam of both. As far as spending from your own pocket is concerned, this is something that relates to the state as well, because that is going to be given to the state. Right before that, we have Aqamus Salat, and Aqamus Salat is not just individual prayer. It mentions the collective prayer, including the Friday prayer, including the Eid prayer. So you see, the element of collectivity is found in those previous mentions as well. And in between them, yes, this is a very prominent departure, I would say, or a very prominent mention that suddenly the words are amruhum shura bainahum. So I think if you could take some time out and look at how Ustaz Amin Islahi has explained this, just consult the Quran, you'll see how beautifully it's explained that this is also a collective directive. And amongst other directives, it stands out in the sense that other directives which are juxtaposed adjacent to it, they have that collective element as well.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Please, if I can request everyone, at the risk of repeating myself, one question at a time, because we have a lot of people who want to ask questions. Thank you. Salman Aziz, you may ask your question. If you could keep it short, thank you so much.
سر اسی آیت کے بارے میں سوال ہے. ایکچولی شاید یہ آیت تھی تھوڑا سا کنفیوژنگ تھی، اس میں مولانا مودودی نے اپنی رائے سے رجوع کر لیا تھا. جو اجتماعی معاملات ہے اس میں تو ٹھیک ہے، لیکن ڈیلی معاملات میں کچھ اس کا سمجھ نہیں آتا. مثال کے طور پہ کوئی بڑا آپریشن ہو رہا ہے اور ایک سینئر سرجن ہے، تو وہ ایک رائے دے لیکن ساتھ جونیئر ڈاکٹرز ہوں، تو اس کو اگر وہ رائے مختلف دے رہے ان کو مان لینی چاہیے. اسی طرح جنرل صاحب مستقلی لگا رہے ہیں اور وہ جو ہے
دیکھیں یہ آیت کا تعلق انفرادی معاملات سے تو ہے ہی نہیں. یہ تو انفرادی معاملات میں ہم نے ویسے بات کی کہ اگر مشورہ لے لیا جائے تو اچھی بات ہے، آپ مشورہ لے لیں، فیصلہ خود ہی کریں. یہ تو اجتماعی معاملات اور اسٹیٹ اور سیاست کے معاملات کے بارے میں یہ آیت بنیادی طور پہ وارد ہوئی ہے. انفرادی معاملات سے اس کا کوئی لنک نہیں ہے. وہ تو ہم نے ویسے اس پہ گفتگو کی تھی کہ انفرادی معاملات میں اگر کوئی کنسلٹیشن کی جا سکتی ہے تو ضرور کرنی چاہیے، کوئی فائدہ اگر ہوگا. لیکن اس کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہے کہ ایک سرجن جو آپ نے مثال دی کہ وہ ہر ایک سے فیصلہ کرواتا پھرے اور جو خود بھی مطمئن نہ ہو تو وہ اس طرح سے آپریشن کر دے. یہ تو ہرگز یہاں مراد نہیں ہے. وہ انفرادی معاملات ہیں اور انفرادی چوائسیز ہیں، اور وہاں پہ کنسلٹیشن کر کے آپ اپنا فیصلہ خود کر سکتے ہیں. یہاں پہ آپ باؤنڈ ہیں، جو میجورٹی فیصلہ ہے، اگر وہ مثال کے طور پہ آپ ایز این انڈیویجول آپ ہیڈ آف دا اسٹیٹ ہیں، آپ کی رائے اور تھی اور میجورٹی کی اور ہے، تو آپ یہ نہیں کہہ سکتے کہ میں ویٹو کر رہا ہوں یا میں اوور رول کر رہا ہوں. وہاں پہ the majority opinion will prevail. یہ کلیکٹیوٹی کی بات ہو رہی ہے.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Sumbul, please ask your question. Thank you.
السلام علیکم ڈاکٹر صاحب. مجھے یہ پوچھنا تھا کہ ویسے جنرلی میرا جو انڈرسٹینڈنگ تھی وہ یہ تھی کہ حضور صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم مشورہ کرتے ہوتے تھے، یعنی ریگارڈلیس آف، یعنی جیسے وہ صلح حدیبیہ میں اپنی وائف کے پاس آئے تھے اور انہوں نے کہا تھا کہ نو بڈی از لسننگ ٹو می، تو اب میں کیا کروں، از دیٹ رائٹ؟ اور پھر جو غزوہ خندق تھا اس میں انہوں نے حضرت سلمان فارسی سے آئی تھنک he took his opinion among the other opinions.
جی دیکھیں، یہ تو ساری وہ چیزیں ہیں کہ جو اس میں کوئی دو رائے نہیں ہے. یعنی یہ تو یہ ہے کہ نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم بہت زیادہ کنسلٹ کرتے تھے، لیکن کہا یہ جا رہا ہے کہ کنسلٹ کرنے کے بعد کیا وہ پابند تھے کہ جو ان کو مشورہ دیا جا رہا ہے وہی وہ کرتے؟ تو دینی معاملات میں تو خاص طور سے وہ اس کے پابند بالکل بھی نہیں تھے. اور اجتماعی معاملات میں اگرچہ وہاں پہ بھی ان کو اللہ تعالیٰ نے کہا تھا کہ آپ فیصلہ کریں، لیکن جیسے آپ نے بتایا، اور اس کی بڑی اچھی مثالیں ہیں کہ آپ نے ہمیشہ میجورٹی اوپینین کی رسپیکٹ کی. حتیٰ کہ یہ ایک بہت بڑا واقعہ جنگ بدر میں ہوا کہ جب وہ پڑاؤ ڈالنے کا معاملہ تھا کہ لشکر کہاں سے جنگ لڑے، تو حباب بن منذر جو تھے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے ایک صحابی، تو انہوں نے یہ بتایا کہ یہ جو جگہ آپ نے سوچی ہوئی ہے نا، یہ اینمی کے وانٹیج پوائنٹ کے لحاظ سے بہت خطرناک ہے. تو کیا آپ نے یہ جو سوچا ہوا ہے یہ اللہ کی طرف سے آپ نے فیصلہ کیا ہے یا آپ کی اپنی رائے ہے؟ تو پروفٹ نے کہا یہ تو میری اپنی رائے ہے. تو حباب بن منذر نے کہا تو پھر اس رائے کے نتیجے میں یہ اور یہ نقصان ہو سکتا ہے. آپ نے اپنی رائے فوراً تبدیل کی اور حباب بن منذر کی رائے کو قبول کر لیا. تو ان کے ہاں تو نہ صرف مشورے کی مثالیں ملتی ہیں بلکہ اپنی رائے کو چینج کرنے کی مثال ملتی ہے. تو لیکن میں جسے میں عرض کر رہا ہوں کہ یہ نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم ہوں یا کوئی بھی ہوں، فرق یہ ہے کہ وہ ڈیوائنلی گائیڈڈ تھے، اور اگر کسی فیصلے کے بارے میں وہ یہ کہہ دیتے کہ میں اللہ کی طرف سے کر رہا ہوں تو ظاہر ہے کوئی چوں نہیں کر سکتا تھا. ان کے بعد چلے جانے کے بعد جو لوگ زمام کار کے پاس آئیں گے who will be at the helm of affairs, وہ they cannot, I mean, overrule the view of the majority, or they cannot do that.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I have a last question in the chat. Can vulgarity be relative to societal norms?
دیکھیں vulgarity is not something that can be ever be relative. اس کی وجہ یہ ہے کہ قرآن مجید نے ایک جگہ بتا دیا ہے کہ تین جو بیسک نیکیاں ہیں، تین بیسک moralities پازیٹیولی اور نیگیٹیولی، ان میں سے ایک فحش چیز بھی ہے. تو جو فحاش ہونا ہے یا فحش ہونا ہے، اس کا مطلب یہ ہوتا ہے کہ کسی نہ کسی سینس میں آپ اپنے سیکشل آرگنس کو ڈسپلے کر رہے ہیں in a sense that you are trying to create attraction in some form or the other. اس کو کہتے ہیں فوش ہونا. تو یہ اس میں کوئی ریلیٹو چیز نہیں آ سکتی. اس سے کم تر چیزوں میں ہو سکتا ہے کوئی چیز ریلیٹو ہو سکے، لیکن بائی میکنگ یور آرگنس پرومیننٹ فار ادر پیپل ان اے وے دیٹ یوڈ لائک ٹو کیچ اٹینشن اینڈ ڈو تھنگز اکارڈنگلی. تو یہ وہ چیز ہے کہ جو ہر دور میں جس کو غلط سمجھا گیا ہے اور پریویس اسکرپچرز میں بھی اس کو غلط سمجھا گیا.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. We have no more raised hands and we're all out of time. Inshallah, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you so much for your wisdom once again. Khuda Hafiz, everyone.